Welcome to the Bigger, Braver Life show, where leaders and high performers learn to rewire their minds, regulate their nervous systems, and rise into their next evolution. I'm Angela Williams, therapist, leadership coach, and your guide to living, leading, and creating from deep alignment. Because your bigger, braver life isn't about doing more, it's about becoming more of who you really are.
Welcome back to the Bigger, Braver Life show. Your host, Angela Williams here. I'm so excited to have you all back. I have a wonderful guest today. She brings such an amazing powerhouse presence wherever she's at, and I'm super excited to share Jasmin Haley, CEO of the Legacy Scalar Consulting Firm. Jasmin is an award-winning speaker, author, educator, and podcaster dedicated to helping audiences understand that the time is now if they want to make an impact and serve their communities from the heart. Her inclusive message on burnout, becoming legacy driven, and how to create presentations that reach the heart have impacted the lives of her audience members and transformed the professionals she has coached to business growth and successful speaking careers. Welcome, Jasmin.
Thanks for having me, Angela. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Yes, I'm so happy to have you again, folks. When we met on in a group that is dedicated to amazing professionals continuing to grow their business, take care of themselves, do things more effectively, efficiently, and inclusively. And so she just brings such a wonderful presence. So I'm really happy to have her here. So Jasmin, tell us about your journey to, from where you started to where you are now. How are you living your bigger, braver life?
So I started my journey in an atypical way. I would never have thought that I would actually be in entrepreneurship full time. I knew that I had a love affair with teeth by the age of 13. I knew that I was going to dedicate my life to dentistry. And so I went to a specialized high school for dental. I wind up graduating from there near the top of my class. And I went into dental hygiene. And once I finished dental hygiene school, I was going to become a dentist. And it didn't work out that way. I wound up starting a family instead and decided to dedicate my career specifically to public health, and eventually went into academia and started teaching full time. But what I didn't realize was that I was in a toxic work environment. I had unhealed trauma that I had not dealt with. I was in the perfect eye of a storm when my mother suddenly passed away. And so grief with toxic work environment, burnout wind up taking over my life. And I had to make a decision if I was going to continue on that track or change my life, because I had children that were watching me. And so I decided to leave my place of employment and start my business. And at that time, the skills I had was educating. I had worked in nonprofit work and I planned events when I was an educator as well. And so I took my skills, which were educating, and I started my speaking business. And I started hosting my own events and eventually grew into a well-known brand in healthcare. But in 2019, at the end of it, and in 2020, I decided to pivot my business outside of the healthcare industry because I knew my calling was larger than what they could provide for me. And so now I do the work that I do now. I have a consulting firm where we help people amplify their voice through speaking. And I think what's really important for everybody to know, I live a bigger, braver life because I am legacy driven. And I know that every choice that we make every single day is a part of our legacy. Every interaction we make, every intention that I set for the day, it's a part of my legacy. And so I have decided to live with no regrets. And therefore, that means that I have to show up, get visible, and help other people be set free with my own message so that they can then live out their legacy using their voice.
Wow, thank you so much. That was a wonderful recap of your journey. And there's so many points I want to touch on. And folks are listening to this. There's a lot of similarities actually in our stories. I've also in the education space for a while. And always having this calling and knowing that there's something bigger that is calling for us to do. And I think, getting in these situations where we're on one path, and then because we're trying to help and we love people, yeah, there's other stuff going on, real-time stuff, stressors, right? Past traumas, stories, right, that are kind of keeping us stuck in this burnout and stress cycle. We have to make a choice. And so, with being able to see, such change of impact that you were able to make now versus maybe, that smaller scale impact that you were trying to, what a great ability and opportunity for you to do that and answering that call of, yes, I know there's more. I know there's better. That's really what this show is about. Thank you for doing that. I want to have you talk more about legacy, because I think that's something that when I think about myself, when I think about a lot of the entrepreneurs that we share the space with, we have such a big vision that it includes multiple generations ahead of us. And I want to ask you something. It was a lot of discovery to get here, but I want to help individuals, groups, teams, communities, right? Help them to achieve their version of success, to achieve their higher potential, because I know that's going to ripple impact on their communities, on their children, on their family and friends and things like that. And where I got that starting point was that in my life, there were a lot of people who, it's like you know that they're so intelligent, they're so caring and capable, but this trauma has really taken over their lives and they weren't able to kind of do the work or break out. And so, you just wonder what different ripple effect would that have if they were able, right, to tap into, heal, to grow, to tap into their potential. So I don't know if that resonates for you, but I want to kind of hear more about where that inspired you to impact legacy in that way.
I think there is something within me that I couldn't ignore. And that's just my personality. I am a little bit more of a risk taker. So to give context to that, I am the first college graduate of my siblings. I'm the fifth child, right? But the four siblings ahead of me did not go to college and finish at that time. And they are 20 years my senior, the oldest one. So we're talking about a huge age gap. And I knew by growing up the way that I did, with limited resources and with constant struggle, education was going to be the means of me to get out of that. And what I did not understand was the actual how. What keeps many of us away from moving towards a bigger and braver life is we feel like we need to know every single step that takes us there. But I liken it to driving in fog. You put the high beams on, you're only going to be able to see but a certain couple of feet ahead. You know your destination is ahead of you, but you may not be able to see all of the steps. So you just need to take the first, and then the second, and then the third, and then your pathway becomes clearer. What keeps us stuck and not legacy driven is fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, fear that of reaching the success, not feeling worthy of the success. So when I think about some of the risks that I took, when I left the healthcare industry, I had a 6-figure business. I could have kept growing it, but I knew that there was something bigger. I knew that there was too much struggle with what I did achieve. I knew that in that specific spot, that there was more ease in my life. I just didn't know how I was going to get there. And so I was willing to deal with the ugly parts of the unknown and working through it and trusting myself just enough to move through. That's being legacy driven. It's knowing that there needs to be some sort of change, but you can't mitigate all of the risks. And the hard part is we're also fighting against biological effects. And the reason why I can talk about this in here is I see your LCSW. When we're dealing with people who come from backgrounds, I have a high ACE score. And although this is not definitive answer, I know that my risks are higher because of what I've dealt with as far as trauma in my life. And we underestimate the trauma that's been passed on to us from our family and their family and their family. So there are patterns that we are using every day today that impact our legacy, that impact our decisions. Are we willing to slow down enough to hear where our heart is taking us, where our abilities are taking us, and to be honest enough to see some of those patterns that may come from the past or that have been brought to us? Are we honest enough to say, I'm going to make a choice to do it differently, no matter how hard it is or how scary it's going to be? That was the choice I made. And there were times in my business where dust bunnies were having a party. And I had to say, why? Why was I brought here to this thinking that I can have more? Why? I had to stick it out. And that's the part that most of us aren't willing to brave through. There's nothing remotely different between any of us other than the fact that I've dedicated myself and I committed and I showed up consistently. That is the only difference. And I listened to what my gifts and my strengths were, and I held on tight to that.
Yeah, that's so well put. I think when we make the choice to go after our calling, our vision, especially as a business owner, a movement leader, what have you, there are a lot of times when the traumas, the stresses, the fears, the anxieties, they all can stack up. And especially if you're not, like you said, in some of those seasons where you might not be having that consistent income, that causes folks to say, what am I doing here? I'm going to quit and go work at Starbucks. I'm burning this all down. Like, this is, what am I doing? Because it's, again, you still having to navigate all of those pieces that you said, the fear of the unknown, right? And then if I get the success, then what? Or if I fail, am I going to be rejected? So, and I think, knowing that you have stuff from the past, our traumas, can really contribute how we show up, if we're showing up consistently, if we're choosing the more expansive choice than the more safe choice. And again, nothing wrong with that, but doing the work, doing that inner work, the healing, the therapy, the trauma work, the somatic work, the mindset work, all of that's so important to helping us to detach and separate from that heavy fear-based, stuff that kind of holds us back and holds us away from our bigger calling. So I love that you share that. Yes. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's real. I mean, I feel like business is emotionally, physically, spiritually taxing. And so there's a part of me, I went and got myself some therapy, and there's a part of me of honoring what are those things that scare me the most. And then I dig deep on, well, what's the real reason behind it? Right. Some of us, we don't tap in. And our identity is associated with how much money is coming in and things of that. And so we beat ourselves up on these things that really aren't of true importance to why maybe your business may not be moving in the direction that you're going, Right. So I think there's a part of us that needs to just pause for a moment and really think about, like, what do I really want? What do I desire? Am I aligned to that? Am I doing the work necessary to kind of move through the ugly spaces of it? And guess what? Yes, if dust bunnies are running up in my account, I'm going to go get a job and not feel ashamed about it, so I can have a little bit of capital to work with. Most of us have done that. I have done that. So I think that needed to be done in order for me to get to where I'm at now.
Yeah. And giving ourselves permission. I think, the dollar amount coming in, obviously we're trying to run a business and not have a hobby, right? That's costing us money. And we really want, that money to come in. But I think as you are on this path to being an entrepreneur, to leading something bigger, there's so much growth that needs to happen during the process that we forget to measure that as the wins, as the progress, as the seeds that are being planted for the next step, where the cash inflow is going to come in. I mean, I can't even remark how many wild phases of growth and change and learning that have occurred even in my own business journey. I have a therapy practice, and then I have a coaching practice, and I always talk to other folks who are therapists turned coaches because it's so interesting. The therapy space is, we've got well-oiled inroads. We've got, a lot of tools and companies that are helping you get clients, and that can kind of help you, kind of roll the ball. But it's a little different in the coaching space. You have to kind of create your own inroads and do a little bit more of that legwork. So that can feel like a different ball game when you're used to something over here and then, trying to transition over here. So but I think the amount of learning and growth, like, we really have to put that in as a measurement of, this whole process, because we can also share that with others and help them in their process. Absolutely. Can you talk more about why specifically is it that you are helping people to share their message, to speak their message? What calls you to that specifically?
What called me to that was when I was out there speaking and sharing my message, the number of people that were stating they desire to do the same. So I stumbled upon coaching and consulting and helping others out of accident. I mean, that was really it. When I started speaking at that time in the healthcare industry that I started in speaking, there were not any other Black dental hygienists on the stage. I was the only one with this melanin like this. There was no one I could reach out to that was, and this is not 1960. This is 2015. Okay. So, whatever. That's an issue.
Yes.
But now it's not that way. And what I found was the number of people that were asking, like, how did you even make this happen? And really, I realized that through the course of kind of coaching people on the side, not really visible, how many people were stuck. I was meeting people that were in their 50s and 60s that could be my mother's age, that were saying how someone told them one bad thing 25, 30 years ago, and they were still having that lingering thought of going out there. And so one of the quotes that moved me to take action was about the richest place on earth being the graveyard. And when I noticed my mother's hopes and dreams, when I started learning about her after she passed away, when her things weren't fulfilled, I said, okay, there's a serious issue here, right? And there are tools that I have that I can help someone just make the process a little bit easier. So I started playing around with it, but I didn't fully step into where I personally feel God wanted me to be until 2021, after shying away from it. The history is, when I first started getting a little bit into the consulting, I had one person give me a hard time about charging $500, giving them content from my speaking, right, that would have made them thousands of dollars. They didn't want to pay $500 for it. And I told myself the false story that no one will ever want to learn from a Black woman about speaking consulting. So when I left the dental industry, I tried to make a business that had nothing to do with speaking. This is wild, y'all. Okay. That's why the dust bunnies were working up in my bank account, because I wasn't aligned. And people would come to me for business help, and they would say things like, can you look at my speaker abstract? Can you help me with this speaking thing? And I'm like, I'm not doing that. But when I niched down to where it's always been, my business skyrocketed. So I share that story because some of us need to realize that, even myself and even you, sometimes we have to surrender to the false stories that are out there. There are people that are waiting to hear your story. There are people that are waiting to hear your message. And I truly believe that you can reach hearts and transform lives with the message you share. I would go to places all over, like people that didn't even look like me, that weren't from the same neighborhoods as me. And they would leave my programs crying their eyes out, hugging me, thanking me for that, changing their careers, changing their life, changing their communities' lives. That's the power of our message. And when we are looking to make a deeper impact, we can do so by sharing our story, but also be well compensated for that. And that's the part that I find is missing for most women, most BIPOC individuals, people that are underrepresented. We don't know how to leverage our intellectual property, our voice, our brilliance. We give it away. We don't understand the value of that. And so what I do in the legacy consulting firm is to teach people how to use their voice, but most importantly, leverage their brilliance, where they can make generational changes by the amount of money that they can make through it.
Beautiful. I think one of and you can tell me, you probably know more about this, but when I talk to folks who want to get further into speaking and sharing their story, there's, I think initial thoughts come up of, my story isn't as impactful as Susie, who went through 55 challenges and lived, or whatever, right? So I think there's that thing that comes up. and that block of like, how do I even go about making money? So is that something you address in your program, or how do you manage that?
Absolutely. We do address that. I think, what my gifts are is packaging expertise, packaging your story into signature talks and programs that can be done on rinse and repeat. Every single one of us have a story. So what I've heard people say is, I don't have a New York Times bestseller. You don't need a book in order to start speaking. I don't have the right weight, accent, hair, ethnicity. You just need to truly be yourself. The audience only cares about you actually pouring into them, right? And giving them something valuable. I've heard things like, I don't have a traumatic story. You don't need a traumatic story in order to share your message. You just need to be you. And you need to figure out how your message impacts the lives of your audience. How can you bring, I would say the best way to describe it is, how can you bring value to the life of the audience member? There's lessons in what we've all learned. There's lessons that you have, Angela, that can help somebody else. And there's no one else that can tell it like Angela Williams can, right? There's no one that is from Jamaica, Queens named Jasmin Haley and has had the same experience. The way I speak is going to be completely different. What you need to combat is whether or not you feel that you're worthy to tell your story.
Absolutely. And, I think, I don't know if I've heard this somewhere. When you approach that topic of sharing your story, it's exactly that. We're all like that individual snowflake with its very own pattern and its very own, way of feeling and thinking and addressing and approaching. So, yeah, I totally agree with that. And that's been an empowering thought process for me as I really became more visible in the online space to, work with folks in the coaching arena. So that was something specifically, in therapy, you're not supposed to be out here visible, sharing your opinions and things like that, right? Like, you are neutral, you take that back seat. But I think, when you have to overcome those stories and know that no matter what, somebody's going to learn something from you. And again, another reason why I wanted this podcast to be held in this way is that we can gain so much. Like, you just probably dropped like 10, I don't know, amazing gems one after another as you're just speaking through your life and what your journey was. So I just love that so much.
Absolutely. And I think what keeps most of us away from actually being profitable in it is I feel that speaking is an art. I feel that it is a craft that we have to take seriously. And at some point in time, doing speaking here and there, it is great. It serves its purpose. But then we need to get serious about, if I really want to make this a part of my business or brand, what systems and structure am I creating for it? And so one of the first is creating a signature talk, understanding what that talk is, who it is that you're speaking to, and then really codifying your expertise so that it's digestible for people that you're pitching, organizers, businesses, right? And for your audience. You're not going to get called back if you don't know how to simplify your message. You're not going to get called back if you're talking about any and every topic either. Right? So there's a part where you need to start taking it seriously. But most people feel speaking is a luxury. And what they don't realize is that it's not, it's a necessity. If we can't talk about our business, our message in an effective way, in a concise manner. I had a client who spoke about her work in 15 minutes. 15 minutes. And she was able to get a 6-figure opportunity from it. She spoke for free for 15 minutes. Not many of us can't say we can talk about our disruptive thinking or our process in a 15-minute keynote. Many of us can't say we can do that like this. We'll be rambling.
Right. And then also the other thing too is when you feel like you have so much knowledge, it's like, what is digestible? You're so far in it, you can't separate that now. But that's so important, like you said, to be able to give it to the right people in the right way and the, digestible way. That was such a great way to say that.
Yes, absolutely.
So Jasmin, thank you for sharing all of this. I'd love to, first of all, have you tell folks, what would you recommend as the first step for somebody who wants to get started sharing their story or being a speaker and being compensated for that?
I would say the first step is getting a signature talk, understanding what that talk is, something that is aligned to your goals for your business and brand. And then from there, you have to pitch it. That's it. Get that talk and then pitch it.
Yeah, and I think that's a great segue into, you sharing how you help your clients, and if folks are interested in working with you, how might they go about that?
Yeah, so we use a framework called the Legacy Scaler Framework, where people want to scale their legacy through the power of their voice. And we help them with building their confidence. We help them with curating a strong business foundation. So we will help you learn how to package your expertise into talks, but most importantly, how to leverage your IP, your intellectual property, to have speaking as your funnel, and then be able to build out sustainable income where you don't even have to show up and you could be making money through your intellectual property. And then we teach them how to create the actual stage. How do you amplify your brand to improve your market value and secure more gigs that allow you to make more sustainable income in your business? So those are the three aspects in which we help them. We have a mastermind program that we all absolutely love. And we have another academy that we're building out to help people strengthen their speaking skills.
That's amazing. I love it. And would you say that you have a particular type of clientele, or is it broader reaching?
That's a great question. I believe my people who come in are change makers.
Yeah.
They're brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
They want to make a huge impact, and their finances of their business all range differently. We have professionals who have 9-to-5s and they're looking to build out a side income through speaking. We have people who are six-figure businesses, multi-six-figure businesses, seven-figure business owners. The foundation is they want to amplify their message and share their message. And that's where we can help them in doing so.
Good. Yeah. I love, and again, more similarities with the work that we do, definitely. I love working with those business owners, those CEOs, those individuals who know that they have a larger calling, they have a message they want to share, they want to make that ripple impact on future generations, and they want to really build beyond just themselves. So I love that. I'm so happy that you were able to join us today. Thank you so much. And any final thoughts?
That's it. Get out there and shake it, y'all.
Let's go. I love it. I love it. Yes. All right, y'all, to make sure to subscribe and tune into the next episode. We'll catch you then.
You're not here for surface level success. You're here to expand. Visit angelamarie.co, where you'll find retreats, private coaching, and resources to expand your capacity and lead with calm, clarity, and authority. If this conversation moved you, make sure to share it with a leader who's ready for more.